Okay. Without any further ado whatsoever, we will get into our agenda for today. First up is House Bill 1009, an act to modify the observation of time in South Dakota. Good morning, Representative Krohmer. You and any of your cohorts have 10 minutes for proponent testimony.
Oh, good. I think it'll just be me. So, good morning, fellow representatives and members of House State Affairs. Representative Ben Krohmer from Mitchell, representing District 20. Today I bring before you House Bill 1009 to once and for all end the time change twice a year and stick to the summertime hours as our standard. I gotta say, it's about time we pass this bill. Now, I know bills similar to this have been brought in the past, so first I'll talk about the benefits of this bill, and then I'll address how this bill differs from ones that have been brought before it. Obviously, we all know that the days are shorter in the winter and longer in the summer because of the rotation of the Earth on its axis, not because of shifting an hour back and forth in the day. This bill is not going to make daylight hours longer. That's impossible. However, by shifting that hour, it gives us the benefits of that hour of daylight at the end of the day in the evening. First, let's talk about the benefits. One of the major benefits when daylight savings was first proposed was to save on candles. Now, obviously, today we don't use candles for lighting anymore, but major topic of conversation is energy conservation. And I sit on Commerce and Energy Committee, so we get to hear quite a bit from utility companies about their energy conservation efforts. Currently, in the wintertime, when there are fewer hours in the daylight, it's still dark in the morning before people go to work and school, so they have their lights on at home no matter what anyways, so no real change there. Then when they go to work or school, and businesses and schools have their lights on throughout the day also, so that doesn't make much of a difference there either. Where the difference in benefit comes into play is at the end of the day when folks go home after work, when they have the benefit of that extra hour of daylight at the end of the day, and that's where you see a savings on utilities. This also benefits multiple industries across the state. The largest industry in our state, agriculture, admittedly seems split on the issue. I've received feedback from folks in the agriculture community. Some are in favor of it, some are opposed to it. While I can't speak on behalf of agriculture, I can say that when daylight savings was first introduced, it was touted as a benefit in daily operations for agriculture by having that hour of daylight at the end of the day versus the beginning. Now, I understand with modern tractors that have super bright LED lights that can light up the field like the Griswold's house on Christmas, it certainly helps working in the dark, but still nothing can actually replicate natural sunlight. Speaking from experience, this will also help with the construction industry for working on construction projects and new buildings for an additional hour in the evening. And construction is 100% economic development. Tourism, the second biggest industry in our state, which is visiting us up at the Capitol this week, and winter sports will also see benefit as it allows them to continue participation later in the day. Also, as an avid hunter, I can tell you this will be a huge perk to hunters and our outdoorsmen as well. And on the home front, it lets folks get home that need to shovel their sidewalk or snowblow the driveway. They have that sunlight rather than having to do it by flashlight, and also gives them some time to make a snowman and play outside with the kids. Additionally, there's multiple studies indicating both mental and physical health benefits from the additional hour of daylight at the end of the day. Helping reduce depression is one. Also, sunlight is the primary intake method for vitamin D, and that with people's immune systems, help with people's immune systems since vitamin D is a major vitamin for the immune system. Most surveys consistently show people want to quit with the time change, and they also show that most people would prefer having summertime hours year-round rather than wintertime hours. This is even proven consistent with other states around the country. Only 2 states have chosen to permanently adopt wintertime hours year-round. On the other hand, 18 states have adopted legislation to make summertime hours permanent. As far as how this bill differs from other bills or other similar bills that have been brought in the past, other bills brought in the past wanted to make daylight savings time or summertime the permanent time standard for the state, which unfortunately the federal law prohibits. Now, I know this is going to sound a little strange, but follow me here. If adopted, this bill will make summertime hours the permanent standard for South Dakota, but goes about it differently than previous bills have, and it does it in a way that is not prohibited by federal law. By now, you're probably asking, how do you plan on doing that? Well, what it does is actually pretty simple, and like I said, it's not prohibited by federal law. Rather than trying to adopt standard or daylight savings as the constant, this bill goes about it in a rather creative and thinking outside the box kind of way. Rather than change the clocks twice a year, it would reclassify and change which time zone we're in twice a year instead. That's why I said stick with me. I know it sounds funky, but it's actually pretty simple, and I'll explain. So in front of you, you should have this sheet of paper handed out. You can choose to look at the top or the bottom, either one. They say the exact same thing, it's just whichever one is easier for you to read. On the side here, you have your winter and summer standards, and across the top, you have your different time zones. I just picked a generic time, 12, 1, 2, 3, and went through them. These two arrows indicate what would happen if our time change shifted. So for instance, we'll still follow the old saying of spring forward and fall back. However, instead of changing our clocks an hour, we change time zones. Like I said, the federal law does not prohibit that. As an example, if passed, this would take effect in the summer and we'd be on Central Daylight Savings Time, or simply put, summertime hours. So when the fall time change takes place, instead of falling back an hour and changing our clocks, we fall back a time zone. We would change from Central Time to Eastern Time, which would then technically be Eastern Standard Time, and that's essentially the same thing as keeping summertime hours or daylight savings in the Central Time Zone. So we fall back a time zone rather than an hour. That lets everyone's clocks stay the same as they do in the summer. Likewise, the western part of the state would fall back to Central Time. Then once the springtime change comes, we spring forward to time zone and we go back to Central Time. The western part of the state would go back to Mountain Time. And as Mr. Chair can tell you, Fort Pierre will continue to do whatever it is Fort Pierre wants to do. Like I said, I know this sounds kind of confusing at first, but it's actually pretty simple when you think about it. During the summer, we are on our normal Central and Mountain time zones. But when the fall back time change takes place, we fall back a time zone to the east. Central falls back to Eastern, Mountain falls back to Central. When the spring forward takes place, we spring forward a time zone to the west. We spring back forward to Central. Western part springs back forward to Mountain. The result is that we always keep the consistent summertime hours that almost everyone prefers, and it's easy to explain to folks in surrounding states that and simply tell them we're on Central or Eastern time. It's time we support this legislation. After a long winter day at work, when we see the light at the end of the tunnel, we should also be able to see the light at the end of the day too. With that being said, I'll appreciate your support and I'll stand by for any questions. I'll just
Thank you, Representative. Are there any other in-room proponents?
Not that I'm aware of, unless somebody else.
Anybody? Okay. We have one online testifier that is a proponent for House Bill 1009. Miss Linda Montgomery, are you out there on the internet?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
I agree with the sponsor.
Ms. Montgomery, just 1 minute. You've got about 3 minutes of testimony, and I'll warn you when you're getting down to it, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I won't take that long. This bill, I believe, is one that should have been passed years ago. I totally agree with it and the sponsor, and I think the change of time zone stays with what is required, and I ask that you vote do pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Seeing no further proponent testimony, we will now move to opponent testimony on House Bill 1009. Are there any opponents of House Bill 1009? Good morning, Representative Sjaarda.
Good morning, State Affairs Committee, friends. I'm representing myself this morning, John Sjaarda from Valley Springs. I'm opposing HB 1009 for several reasons. First, I'm a farmer who works outside most days that I'm not in Pierre. If this bill was in law right now, the sun would come up at 8:55 this morning on my farm. I know most farmers get going before the sun comes up anyway, but we don't work in a vacuum. We have to get our livestock hauled to the slaughterhouse. We have to have veterinarians come out to work with livestock. We don't want to wait till 9 o'clock in the morning to start these things. Also, there are several people who work outside for their 8 to 5 jobs, construction people. They don't want to start their first hour in the dark. Standard time in the winter time just makes their jobs safer and more efficient. The second reason I oppose this bill is for the children. I'm a substitute bus driver. Picking up kids in the dark in the morning is just more dangerous than picking them up when it's light out. Also, in my little town of Valley Springs, we don't have a stoplight. The school is right along the busiest road in town. Many kids walk to school. We have a crossing guard to help the kids get across the road. But you don't think of a crossing guard working in the dark in the morning to get the kids across the road. My third point is the fact I live 1 mile from Minnesota and 5 miles from Iowa. I deal with people from Minnesota and Iowa almost daily. Sioux Falls is also about 15 miles from the border. A lot of people live in Minnesota and Iowa and work in Sioux Falls. If we have different time change laws than the states that surround us, it would cause a lot of needless confusion. Imagine your work life and your home life being on a different time part of the year and the same time the other part of the year. Very confusing. So I'm going to ask the State Affairs Committee to do what you do best and kill this bill.
There's just a lot of buttering up this morning. They really know their chairman here, don't they? Okay. Is there any further opponent testimony for House Bill 1009? Good morning, Senator.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I do need to sign up. I had forgotten about this one. I wholeheartedly agree with Representative.
Would you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, I thought I did. Oh, Senator Julie Frye-Mueller from District 30. And I totally agree with Representative Sjaarda on this. We live out in the country. We've lived out there for 23 years, and there's a road that is 50-mile-an-hour road, and the bus picks children up on the road, and they have to cross the road. And one of my neighbor kids, he's 11, he goes, "Julie, you got to do something. We can't go to school in the dark. We just can't." And I'm worried about the safety of these children. A lot of us have children or grandchildren, and I just would like you to really consider that, because I don't think kids want to get up and go stand on a highway, or it's a road, but it's 50 miles an hour, and wait for a bus. So please consider the safety of the children. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further in-room opponents of House Bill 1009? Any further in-room opponents of House Bill 1009? Hearing none, we have Mr. J.P., who is an online testifier. Are you available, Mr. P.?
Yes, sir, I am. Thank you.
Okay, would you please introduce yourself and begin your testimony? You've got about 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you. My name is Mr. JP. I am the president of Save Standard Time. We are a 501c4 nonprofit working across North America to help inform legislators as to the history and science and politics of this issue. I'm also one of the co-chairs of the Coalition for Permanent Standard Time, a collaboration of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, Society for Research on Biological Rhythms, National Sleep Foundation, and the Sleep Research Society. I'm here to ask for a no vote on SB 1009. I would recommend amendment to permanent standard time, in which case we would actually support the bill. Standard time is the real, honest, natural time that's defined from where the sun is positioned in the sky. So if you're familiar with the phrase high noon, 12 noon would be when the sun is highest in the sky at high noon. Daylight saving time was invented about 100 years ago as a war rationing effort. It forces people to get up earlier, to work harder for the war, which is an outdated thing, not something we need right now. And it was sold as a way to save energy, and there's really no data that it saves energy. And in fact, there's data showing that it wastes energy, because with daylight saving time, you're waking people up earlier, so they have to turn on their heat as they get ready for school or work in the morning earlier. That the expense of running your heat is much greater than the expense of turning on lights in the morning or the evening. So that's why it actually wastes energy. It also is a terrible threat to public health and safety, as the previous witness mentioned. When we tried permanent daylight saving time in 1974, in response to the oil crisis, we quickly found that it was killing children, to be quite frank. We were putting them out waiting for the school bus or walking to school, and then they were struck by sleepy motorists who did not get enough sleep. We're trying to work on trying to drive on dark roads in the winter. I don't know if you can imagine the recent winter snowstorm, having to get up and go to work or school an hour earlier than you already did. This caused conflicts with construction and snow plows not being able to do their work before the morning rush hour. So it just threw everybody's schedule in a havoc. School start times became a problem too. we should already be starting school later, but this bill would force school to start even earlier than we do right now. It was mentioned the sunrise today is, I believe it's at 8:13 Central Standard Time. That should become 9:14 Central Standard Time. I don't think you would want to be starting this meeting an hour and a half before the sun rises even. There was mention of farmers like construction. Most farmers do their work in the morning before it gets too hot outside. They need that morning light. There was mention of shoveling your driveways. I think most people need to shovel in the morning after it snows and before they go to work. You don't have the luxury to go to work and then come home and then shovel your snow. I am from Iowa, so I do have experience in shoveling snow. Mood was mentioned. The human circadian system, the neurology, our brains need morning light to help us wake up and feel alert and positive and happy and productive and ready to learn. And if you're sending people to school or work in the dark, they're not getting that kick of that sunlight in the morning. They might not get until the end of the day. And then if you're getting too much light at the end of the day, it can make it harder to fall asleep at night. You might notice this with children if you're trying to put them to bed in the summer, or if you're waiting to have your fireworks in the summer, waiting for that sun to go down. That's because of daylight saving time. Polls were mentioned earlier. Polls are actually very split. It's about a third want standard time, a third want daylight time, a third don't really know or care. They just want to end the clock change. However, when we look at history, we show that when there's support for permanent daylight time going into it, as soon as we experience it, we realize it's a mistake, and that support changes into opposition. As far as the legality of this bill, it is absolutely prohibited by the Uniform Time Act, which I have right in front of me. It's 15 of the U.S. Code, subchapter 9, section 260A. It stipulates that you can only spring forward on a certain date, you can only fall back on a certain date, and if you don't want to spring forward and fall back, then you have to stick to your assigned standard time. There is no process for what this bill provides. So you can either maintain the status quo of changing clocks, which does cause acute harm as we spring forward, or you can opt out of DST. And that is what Arizona has done for many, many decades. That's what Hawaii has done, what the 5 territories have done, and that's what your state can do as well. Most nations on Earth are also on permanent standard time. Again, it is the honest, natural time defined by the outside world. So I would ask for your no vote on this bill and consideration for amendment to permanent standard time. And I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have. Thanks again very much for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. P. Seeing no further opponent testimony for House Bill 1009, we will grant Representative Krohmer an opportunity for rebuttal. How about 3 minutes for rebuttal? Okay.
All right, so I noticed a lot of things that were said were scare tactics from the 70s, but people running people over, having kids standing out on the side of the road. Well, when it's cold out, why are you making your kids stand out on the side of the road? They should be waiting inside the house until the bus pulls up. Then they can go out to the bus. There was also mentioned sunrise after start, and that the start was at 8 o'clock. This meeting convened at 7:45. Are you going to notice when the sun rises 15 minutes or half hour after we start, or an hour and a half after we start? Probably neither, because we're indoors now. Same thing with work and same thing with school. It was mentioned construction. That's pretty much a null fact. I work in the construction industry. We always start in the dark. It was also mentioned the heat doesn't run at night when you're sleeping. I don't know about you guys, but it was negative 18 last week. My heat was definitely running at night. It didn't wait till I woke up in the morning. It was mentioned that some other states have done this. Yeah, 2 states have adopted permanent standard time, while 18 have adopted legislation for permanent daylight standard time, or daylight time. The standard started off, or this daylight saving and standard started off at 6-month split, and since people like daylight savings time more, it's trended more and more. to the point we are today where it's only 4 months of standard time. So in closing, it's long shown that folks are sick of changing their clocks twice a year. They want consistency, they want a one-time year, and they want it to be summertime hours. This bill is designed to give them that. Just to reiterate, contrary to what was said, this is a bill proposed is not prohibited by federal law governing time changes, time zones, or daylight savings. It's simply a creative thinking and outside the box way to accomplish what the majority of people want in a way that's perfectly legal and 100% compliant with federal law. These days, it seems like we consistently have divisive politics, but here we have an opportunity to unite around an almost unanimously supported piece of bipartisan legislation that folks from every political side and viewpoint support. There's no political agenda or bias. It's not geared towards Republicans or Democrats, conservatives or liberals, East River, West River. This is a bill for everybody, East River, West River, for all of South Dakotans. The time is now. Let's finally accomplish this and get it done. The hour is upon us.
Thank you. Thank you. At this point, we will move to questions of the committee. Are there any questions from the committee on House Bill 1009? Questions from the committee? Okay. Seeing no questions from the committee, we will close public testimony and move on to committee discussion and or action. Representative Lesmeister.
I move do pass.
A motion do pass by Representative Lesmeister and a second by Representative Hansen. Comments on your motion, Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Comments are, I think it is about time. Is this bill the right way to go about it? I don't know. I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around moving the time zones, per se. But I do know the states around us have adopted this. It is probably eventually going to happen. The notion of not working till later in the morning after daylight and stuff is null and void. You can drive anywhere you want, even in South Dakota, and DOT's working in the middle of the night. Construction outfits are working at night to avoid traffic. So I don't get that argument. As far as waking up or doing anything else, I wake up accordingly. If I got an appointment I got to go to in East River, guess what? I got to move a time zone. If I got to do business East River, I got to move a time zone. I live on the very eastern edge of mountain time. My daylight doesn't start the same as Denver. I'll guarantee you when it's daylight at my house, it's dark 30 in Denver yet. So it just depends on how it affects you, where you live. But I'm just curious about this bill, and it's interesting. It's a whole different concept, so I'd like to see some more debate about it.
Thank you. Representative Hansen, any comments?
Sure, Mr. Chair. Thanks for asking. I guess I fall into that 1/3 of people who really could live with it either way. I just want some consistency. I don't like the clock change. I prefer having light later on into the day, but I think at some point we just got to stop this going back and forth and stick to one time and just leave it there. Whatever it is, I could live with it either way. And so that's why I'm going to support this. Thank you.
Representative Cammack.
I move substitute motion for the 41st day.
Substitute motion by Representative Cammack, defer to the 41st day, seconded by Representative Chase. Comments on your substitute motion, Representative?
I know it's been forever ago and nobody remembers, but I do remember I was working construction in 1974, and it was no fun when you had to work in the dark for at least 2 hours before the sun come up. And along with that, I also remember the news reports of the children getting hit because it was in the dark, and so I would recommend the 41st day.
Representative Chase, anything to follow?
I'll just add that I think it adds confusion. If you've got Sioux Falls on a different time zone than what you've got for people in southwest Minnesota, northwestern Iowa, I just think it's going to lead to confusion. I just think that as struggling as it is for some people to change the clocks, it's not that big of an inconvenience.
Any further comments? Sorry, Representative Drury.
Quick comment. I just guess I don't know the law on this, but when that Mr. JP brought up that this was not legal. So I think maybe we should just look at it again. I'm kind of in that 1/3 that coming from mountain to central, back and forth, it is confusing, and especially if your phone doesn't switch for you. But I just think that we all want a resolution, but right now I think we should stick with what we have and make sure that when we do go forward, it's absolutely legal. Thank you.
Representative Lesmeister.
Just for clarification, Mr. Chair, thank you. Minnesota did adopt to go to permanent daylight savings time. So just for reference.
Okay. Any further comments on Representative Cammack's motion to defer House Bill 1009 to the 41st day? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Bartels.
Aye.
Blair.
Aye.
Cammack.
Aye.
Chafee.
Aye.
Chase.
Aye.
Drury.
Aye.
Hansen. Healy.
Aye.
Lesmeister.
No.
Reimer.
Aye.
Wagnus.
Aye.
Rehfeld.
Aye.
Mortenson.
Aye.
11 ayes, 2 nays.
Representative Cammack's motion to defer House Bill 1009 to the 41st day, having received a majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. For those new to our process, deferral to the 41st day defeats the bill. So it has been deferred to a legislative day that does not exist. So that bill has now been defeated.